Welcome everybody to the Nitty Gritty. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Bob Burg, and long list of accomplishments for you. Co-author of I don't know how many books. I was surprised when I started looking into it how many books you've actually authored. I'm more familiar with the Go Giver series and the Endless Referrals.
Yeah. That's
kind of what I know you for, but when I looked into it, you've written quite a few other books now, haven't you?
Yeah, something like 11 or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you start as an author, or did you start on the speaking training route? Because now a lot of what you're doing is you travel, you're doing, sales presentations, trainings, coaching training, stuff like that. Am I right?
Mainly, I do keynotes at conventions and conferences and so forth. And I'm actually doing less now than I have for a long time. I've been at this for 30 years now, and I'm 61. And, I never really loved the travel aspect.
Yeah.
I love the speaking part and meeting people and, have been blessed to be in some great places and so forth, but I never really enjoyed the travel aspect of the business. But if they don't really come to you, you got to go to them.
When you speak, that's kind of part of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, and so you do it, and you reframe it into being grateful that you don't have to take the bus or the train or whatever, and you get there pretty fast. And other than a few real bad delays and some horror stories we all have that really, when you think about it, aren't that bad in retrospect. You do it. But as I get older, I'm just not willing to do as many things that I really don't want to do.
Yeah.
So I still love the speaking, and so I'm doing it no more than 20 times a year outside of Florida.
Okay.
My business partner, Kathy Tajanel, and I have events that we have in Orlando and in South Florida, and we're going to be doing more and more of those. So by and large, keynotes, I've done seminars through the years, and a few full-day programs, but really not many over the years. So it's really more the speaking and the writing.
And it said something that you've even done stuff with former presidents.
No, well, I've been on stage.
On stage with them.
I mean, but it's not like I consulted and was in their inner, circle or anything.
Got it.
If I was in their cabinet, it would have been to help them, pick out the right refrigerator. Nothing like that. But I've just when you're doing it long enough, you're on stage with everyone at some time. It seems.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you cross paths with everyone at one point or another.
Yeah.
So before we jump into, I'd really like to know more about maybe you. Like, where did you grow up? What was your how did your kind of childhood kind of form you into what you've been able to do now?
Well, on one hand, I was very, very lucky to be born to two great parents, and so that that it doesn't get much better than that. Two parents who were and still are, best friends, and they're married 63 years, 62 or 63 years or something like that.
That's awesome.
And so that was I had a great example of what being a person was.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I also had, and I didn't realize this till it was diagnosed at I think 26. I had and still have OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, which is very misunderstood. You hear people say things, "Oh, I'm so OCD about something." They have no clue what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It's a chemical imbalance in the brain that messes up your life big time. So I've had to basically struggle with that. That's been my big thing that I've had to not overcome, because you never overcome it.
Yeah.
But live
learn
a life,
to manage a little bit.
Managing it. Great way to say it. Managing it. Yeah.
How did you kind of diagnose that? I mean, like you said, a lot of people half-heartedly joke about being OCD about stuff. So how did you actually get to the point where you diagnosed it?
Well, I mean, growing up, I just, I was very, extremely depressed. But it's more than that. I don't even like to say that, because that's not part of it. There are reasons why that with certain things. But I knew it was kind of that I was different from everyone else, and that there were certain things that were really just monstrous going on inside my head on a constant and consistent basis. I just thought I was nuts. In fact, one psychiatrist I saw, when I was about 19, he said to me when I told him remember, this is a long time, but now OCD is well known. Okay?
Yeah.
People who don't have it don't really understand it, and that's okay. I don't want anybody to understand it, because I don't want anybody to have it, and you have to have it to understand it.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's a lot of there's the OC foundation in Boston that does great work. I mean, it's now in the mainstream. That's a better word to say. It's in the mainstream. Back then, it wasn't. Remember, I'm 61. When I grew up, no one knew what that was.
True.
Okay,
you didn't talk about it, even if you did know about it.
Well, sure. Yeah, I thought I was nuts.
Yeah.
And a psychiatrist, I was in his office, and I told him some of the things that were going on, which are hard for me to even tell a psychiatrist. And he said to me, "You're nuts." And I thought,
the psychiatrist said that.
Yeah, it's like I felt like Rodney Dangerfield. It's like, oh, my psychiatrist calls me nuts. Oh, no respect, But yeah, but he didn't know. And God bless him. That wasn't the nicest thing he ever, said. I hope, but no, who knew? So finally, when I was 26, I got an appointment at McLean Hospital in Boston, which was known as back in the day they called it a mental hospital, but they did great work with different things, and OCD was just starting to be studied, and it just happened that the person I saw at McLean had a colleague there who was studying OCD. And so he introduced me to him. He did a diagnosis, and it was indeed OCD, and so forth. So that's when I knew. And it's always great when you can put a name to it, and you're not the only one, and
you're not crazy.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you how you know that. Because if you have OCD, you're probably not crazy, because you know that what you're thinking is crazy. Okay?
Yeah.
If you didn't know,
you recognize it,
right? Then you'd be crazy, right? But no, you know it. You know it's absolutely insane. It's ridiculous. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's the other part of my growing up. So I had, on one hand, great family.
Yeah.
On the other hand, a very tough thing to go through. And
yeah.
And at 61, I'm still trying my best to manage it, and not always successfully. I still struggle with it. But I often say to people, you don't because people say, well, you're obsessive about things. That must help you be successful in some way. No, you can have an obsessive personality in a certain way that can help you become successful, actually. But with OCD, no, you are not successful because of OCD. You're successful in spite of OCD.
Yeah. So when did you know that you were going to want to become an author and kind of go down that path of writing books? I mean, from that point on, college, you started your career. What were you doing that kind of started to prep you for that?
Yeah, so I started out as a radio broadcaster, a radio sportscaster, and that's something I'd wanted to do since I was a little kid, be in radio and TV. I actually, I grew up in the Boston area, so I wanted to be third baseman for the Boston Red Sox. Probably had a shot, other than the fact that I had absolutely no talent. But that aside, I was
just
actually
a small
in a good
factor.
Track,
just a small factor.
And so. So the next best thing, sportscaster, and I did that for a little bit. Then I got a job on a small ABC network affiliate in the Midwest, and I actually worked my way up to the late night news anchorship. So I was the 10 o'clock news guy, and I was probably the worst newscaster you've ever seen, because I wasn't a journalist. What did I know? I was 24 years old. I knew nothing about the news, and at that time, I didn't care.
You'd done it with personality, probably.
Right. And so it was like, my idea of a good newscast opening. I was probably too positive even for the, for that kind of medium. I would have loved to have said, "Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Berg, in the news tonight. Everything's great. Go to sleep. Go to bed. We'll let you know if something comes up." And it was not long before I wasn't on television anymore, and I like to say graduated into sales. And the problem I had, though, was I knew nothing about sales. I'd never had any training. I didn't even know there was such a thing as training, sales. And the company I started with was, we'll just say their training was minimal. And when I say minimal, I mean none. And so so I floundered for the first few months until I was in a bookstore, and again, this is about 40 years ago now, almost. And I came across a couple of books. One was by Zig Ziglar, and one was by Tom Hopkins. The two, these were the two sales guys, at the time. And I got those books, and I always love to say I didn't read them; I devoured them. And I just started, and all my time when I wasn't at work, I was studying these books, and I was highlighting and taking notes, and I was practicing, and I was rehearsing, and I was there. And really, within a few weeks, my sales began to go through the roof. It was amazing. And it was encouraging to me because it said if you have a methodology for doing something, a system, if you will, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Right? And to this day, I personally define a system as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles.
Something you can do again.
Yeah, the key is predictability.
Yeah.
If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired result of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and keep doing A and keep doing A, and eventually you'll get the desired result of B.
Yep.
And so I really enjoyed that, and I started to really learn everything I could about sales. But the great thing was I started to realize that sales wasn't just about sales, it was about personal development. So I started reading all the books, the How to Win Friends and Influence People, and the Magic of Thinking Big, and the Psycho-Cybernetics, and Think and Grow Rich, and just all these gems. And I started building myself from the inside. I was getting an education. I was the worst student too. I mean, I barely graduated high school. In fact, you talk about being insulted by people, right? Like the psychiatrist. My guidance counselor at graduation said, Berg, I can't believe I'm actually seeing you here today. And he was a nice guy. I mean, that's the funny thing. But I got into college on academic probation, which is no big deal. A lot of people do that, I guess. But I graduated on academic probation. I mean, I was really so. It was after I got into sales that my education really began.
Exactly.
And so that was just such a wonderful thing. And eventually, I worked my way up to sales manager of a company, and yeah, as they said, Seinfeld, yada, 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 here we are today. No,
yada.
I started teaching others how to do what was working for me, and started first selling, this is how long ago, at first I started by selling cassette tape programs for for those of you listening who are not my age, these were these things way back, I started doing that. Then I started, selling myself my own system and so forth. That things that had worked for me that I put together, and then so forth.
So what gave you kind of the confidence to do your own cassette training? I mean, you'd obviously found success in sales, but did you have something in you that always was, I want to kind of give back and kind of tell people how I do it? Or what was it that made you want to start down that path? Because there's a lot of guys that start down sales and become really successful, but they stay in that route because it gets comfortable and easy, and they don't ever really veer outside of it.
I liked the idea of speaking. It gave me a chance to. I think I'm a teacher by nature.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I like systems and why I've enjoyed speaking, because I'm not the fastest learner, and that's an understatement. Okay, I don't necessarily catch on to things quickly. Once I have it, but I'm a slow learner, and so I think because of that, I have the empathy for others, understanding that they may not be learning as quickly, so I can kind of relate to people and they can relate to me, and so that helps me be a good teacher. And I think when we're good at something, we tend to have a joy for it. I think that's how we were created.
Absolutely.
We tend to be good at what we enjoy and enjoy what we're good at, and so I enjoy that. I enjoyed speaking, enjoyed the idea that it was bringing value to people's lives, and that I could touch people's lives in a way, and keep learning as I was doing it. I mean, it's fun because when you think about it, I'm always, I always say my house is basically books with some scattered furniture, right? So I mean,
I love that.
So I'm in a job that I love the whole aspect of it. My play is my work, and so. And so I don't know if it was confidence, because I certainly had lots of self-doubts. But so I was selling this other person's cassette tape program, and they taught me that what happened is I went to a seminar and I bought the person's tapes, and then at the back of it they said, if you want to make some extra money speaking, we'll show you how to sell these tapes. And so I went down there, they showed me how, and from what they said, I was like their leading sales distributor in the nation, and it was only because I listened to what they taught me how to do it.
Yeah.
So I'd speak everywhere for free at every civic club, group, organization, anywhere that would have me. I'd do my 20 to 30 minute thing. I'd do the commercial at the end, and boom. And I mean, it was just predictable.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go out on my own and do my own thing, and so again, I just made the decision and I did it despite the doubts.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So one of my very favorite books I've ever read of all time is you're the author of it, The Go-Giver.
Oh.
And I, like you, I love to read, but I like to read something that has heart. And I feel like you found a way to make people want to be a human being. I really, really love the whole concept of the Go-Giver. Do you relate to anybody, and do you feel like you're kind of one of those people?
Yeah, I think that when we wrote this, and by the way, I've got to give tons of kudos to my co-author John David Mann, because he's really the storyteller. I mean, he's the lead writer. I'm a how-to guy. I'm step 1, step 2, step 3. And when I got the idea for this, it was because I had a book out at the time called Endless Referrals. And that was a how-to book. It taught you how to basically create relationships where people would know you, like you, trust you, want to do business with you, want to refer you to others.
Right.
But I'd always loved parables because I'd been reading them for a long time, and they were always just such a great way of getting a message and so forth. So when I had the idea for the Go-Giver, which really I wanted it to be sort of the philosophy behind Endless Referrals. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, what is the essence of a person who is able to develop these know, like, and trust relationships both quickly and sustainably? And the answer was, well, they're always giving. They're giving value. They're always looking for ways to provide value to others, make other people's lives better, happier, more fulfilled through their product service or through their whatever it is they do. But writing a parable is a lot different from writing a how-to book. A how-to book is easy. You just write down what you know.
Yeah. Step 1, step 2, step 3. There you go.
Exactly. A parable is a lot different, even though there's lots in the book that happened that we put into story form. It's still a work of fiction. And I can tell a story from stage when it's something that happened, but that's different from writing a story. Right. But I, at the time, was that I had kind of come up with this idea. And so I called it the Go-Giver because that was the basic, the Go-Giver, that they're always giving, value. But I knew I needed someone who could really write it in a way that that we could kind of collaborate, and it would be better than if I wrote it myself. And so I knew John David Mann because he was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I was writing for at the time, and he was brilliant in his editing. And there was at the time he wasn't very well known outside a specific niche. Now you go into a bookstore and there's lots of John's books there that are in, and he's the author of choice for celebrities who their agent knows can't write, or the publisher knows. So John gets but back then very few people knew how brilliant he was. Fortunately, I was one of the ones who did know how brilliant he was. So I called John, and it was the first time we'd ever spoken on the phone. I called him to tell him about this idea.
Had you guys met before?
We had never met.
Okay.
We had never met. And I asked him, and when I say I asked him, I mean I pleaded with him to be the co-author and lead writer of this book. Well, he was actually about to move to Hollywood at the time with his fiancee, now his wife, Anna, and because he was going to be a screenwriter. And he's one of these guys. He could do that. He could knock out a show, but he was intrigued enough by the idea that when he and Anna were visiting her mom a few weeks later, they took a trip across state from where she was in Tampa to where I am in Jupiter, Florida. And we had about a 4-hour dinner talking about the book and what it would be about and what we would want it to, And he still wasn't sure. But over the next few weeks, he and Anna thought about it, and he called me one day and he said, I think we've got something here. And I remember being, really cool about it, right? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, we'll get together and And I hung up the phone. Yes! And because I knew this guy could work magic with it. But John always, to this day, he says, Berg ruined my Hollywood career, because after that, the book, fortunately took off pretty fast and got big, and the publisher loved John, and he started all of a sudden all this work's funneled to him. So he's he's busy as anyone. Heck, I can hardly get in with John now, But so that was. But for you to say that, Susie, about the book and about the story, just means the world to me to know something like that. That's a compliment that just never gets old. It's always something I treasure.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So you had the idea. Did you I mean, did you have the characters in your mind, what you wanted to do, or was that kind of John's genius that he brought the characters in?
No, so what we did, and this goes back to Susie's question, which I rudely didn't answer, this other part of the question about anybody that we related to.
Right.
So first of all, the characters, some of them are a mix of people.
Okay.
Some are based kind of on people that we pictured what they looked like and some of their attributes and some of their, and some are just we made up. But Joe is basically the everyman or the every person. Everyone's been a Joe or Josephine at some
Love
time.
that, yeah.
And we continue to be in different areas.
Right.
But Joe was the guy who, was a nice guy, a good guy, well-meaning, and he worked hard and he went after it, but he was very focused on himself. It was all about Joe, and it was all about the sale, and it was all, and certainly I was there, and I think most of us at one time or another have been, and it took some people to kind of get into his head a little bit and be able to show him that there was a different way that was more congruent with his humanity that would also make him a lot more successful. So we came up with characters that were. Pindar was actually loosely based on Bob Proctor, who was a speaker out of Toronto, who is very much an abundance type of teacher and speaker, and he's tall with the shocking gray hair type of thing and the deep way, and that's how we pictured Pindar.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, and so they were sort of put together from different people.
Okay. How long was that process for you guys to actually create the characters, create the stories, but then piece it all together? Because I would guess that you would have, we know we want this story and this story. How do we bridge the gap, or how do we tie it together?
Yeah.
When did the 5 laws really become crystal clear?
No, that's great. The first couple of them we knew from the beginning. Okay, the first couple of laws, and then John and I both like to say they kind of wrote themselves after that. Now we knew the basic storyline and where we wanted it to go and what we wanted the people to be like and what messages we wanted Joe to get, but they sort of. Almost like the law, they began to write themselves, because it would be, okay, so what did this person do, and what was the essence of what they did, and how would you describe it? Well, they influenced. Well, how did they do that? They did that by really placing the other person's interest first, moving from that I focus or me focus to that other focus, and so that, then it was, and then authenticity, and then at the end, well, how do you really bring it together? And this is where John is such a genius, and he's done this with every book in the Go-Giver series, where he has found a way, because I got stuck on, I think just about all of them, to kind of have that last law that seems that on the surface goes against or runs contrary to the others, but really what it does is it's that thumb to the 4 fingers. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And so we're talking about the focus being on the giving, but then the end you have to receive. You still have to breathe in. You can breathe out all day long. That's great, but if you don't breathe in, you're going to suffocate.
Yeah.
And it's the same with giving value to everyone. You still have to allow yourself to receive in like measure, or you're going to shut down the flow. You're not going to help anyone, including yourself.
Yeah.
I just have to say one thing. I just don't mean to take over, but the whole idea of bringing value, bringing more value to somebody, offering more value to people. I have to when Andrew reached out to you and asked if you would be willing to do this, and immediately you came right back and were willing to do this, I feel like you're a perfect example of living what you write. And I appreciate that about you, and I think that's why I have connected so much with this book. We have given thousands of these books to people because they speak to people. But as you talk about influence, there's so many people in the world trying to be an influencer. And if they're not true to offering value, or to being a human being, or to do it not, to take the value off of the focus off of yourself, that makes a big difference with people. So I appreciate and respect you, that's the type of a person, that's what you write about, and that's obviously how you live.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been
Thank
fun.
you so much.
We've had, in fact, one of our guests, I gave him a book probably 4 or 5 years ago. He's a CEO of a pretty big company, and he talked about how the principles in the book, the 5 laws, literally has reshaped their whole company culture.
Wow.
And, talks a lot about the first question is not can it make money? That's not a bad question. It's just that
Right.
first question,
Just
right?
First question, exactly.
Man, I could ask so many questions. One thing I was curious, as we were driving up here, I was listening to it again. I read the book at least 2 or 3 times a year.
Thank you.
But we were listening to it again, and a question came in my mind. I was curious, which of the 5 laws do you feel like is maybe, I don't know how to ask it, maybe overlooked or like least understood?
Oh, least understood. I don't know if it's the least overlooked, but the least understood, or at least I don't know if it's overlooked, but the least understood is the law of value itself.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people think that when we say give more in value than you take in payment, that somehow means you're not supposed to make a profit or something, or that you're supposed to give things away for free.
Yeah.
There's a time and place for everything, but that's not what it means at all.
Yeah.
When you think about what does it mean, what's the basic premise of the Go Giver? It's that shifting your focus from getting to giving. When we say giving, of course, we mean constantly and consistently providing value to others. And understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. Meaning it also is very profitable. So it can't mean just giving yourself away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the law of value is your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. What? Isn't that a recipe for bankruptcy? And of course it would be if unless you understand the difference between price and value.
Yeah.
And that's the key. Price is a dollar figure. It's finite. It just simply is what it is. It's a dollar amount. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to someone that they will willingly exchange in this case, their money for this and feel great about it while you make a very healthy profit. And I often cite the example of an accountant who you hire to do your taxes. He charges you $1,000. Okay, that's his fee, literally his price, $1,000. But what value does he give you in exchange? Well, first he saves you $5,000
Right.
on your taxes. Right? He saves you countless hours of time, and he provides you and your family with the security and the peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, so what
IRS
he's done,
doesn't come knocking on your door, right?
exactly, and that's worth more than anything. In fact, what we see here actually from that example is that while price is finite, value can be both concrete in terms of that $5,000. We can get our arms around that very easily. It's concrete, but it can also be conceptual.
And it can be everlasting.
Absolutely, in terms of that peace of mind and and so forth. And so what this accountant did is gave you well over $5,000 in value in exchange for a $1,000 price, or gave you more in value than he took in payment. So you obviously feel great about it, but he also made a very healthy profit because to him it was worth it to lease out his time and expertise for $1,000.
Yep.
Okay? So in fact, in a free market-based exchange, and when I say free market, I simply mean no one is forced to do business with anyone else. They do it by their own volition, which is the best way for business to take place. There are always 2 profits, the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each come away better off after the transaction than they were before the transaction. Now, the accountant, though, I can guarantee you did not get this account of yours because when you were interviewing him to see if he should have your business, if he should be your accountant, he was not focused on the fee. He was not focused on grabbing your money. He was focused on how he could make your life better. He was focused on how he could provide value to you. So he asked you questions so that he would understand what it is you're looking to accomplish, what you need, what you want, what you do, which is what selling is.
Yeah.
Okay, it's focusing on that other person. It's discovering what the other person needs, wants, and desires and helping them to get it. But take take this one more step. What we talk about with the law of value and the accountant and the 5,000 and so forth, that's just the intrinsic value. But any accountant is supposed to do that. So how do you separate yourself? And this is where the law of value really shines. Because if these days technology has basically leveled off the playing field. I mean, most products and services work. They're pretty similar. They're pretty much the same, and they're good.
It's commoditized. Everything.
It's commoditized. So if a prospective customer or client doesn't know the difference between any one or more accountants or dentists or realtors or insurance professionals or financial advisors or graphic design, if they don't know the difference, if they cannot distinguish between any two or more of them, it'll always come down to who has the lowest price.
Yep.
Okay, and unless your last name is Walmart or Amazon.com, maybe trying to make low price your unique selling proposition,
your value proposition,
I just put air quotes around, right? Yeah. I mean, what happens is if you sell on price, you're a commodity.
Yep.
If you sell on value, you're a resource.
Yep.
So the question is, well, how do you separate yourself? How do you distinguish yourself? And this is where, and by the way, the good news is there are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to do this, but they tend to come down to 5 what we call elements of value. And those elements of value are excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, and appreciation. And to the degree that you are able to communicate one or more, hopefully all 5 of those elements at every single touch point, from the minute you meet that person, whether it's outbound, whether it's inbound, whether it's at a local charity event, to building the relationship, through the selling process, through the follow-up and follow-through, through the referrals, to the degree you're able to communicate those elements of value, that's the degree you take both the competition and price out of the equation. So the law of value, which as you can tell is kind of a whole seminar behind that, that can be easily overlooked when someone reads something called, the Go-Giver, and the law of value, and are they just saying give it away? No, we're not.
Yeah.
No, what you just said applies to no matter what you're involved with, whether you're a realtor or whatever you are, those 5 principles that applies to every single thing you offer.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was at a retreat, and there's a quote that it's better to be different than be good, or something like that. So it's like you distinguish yourself not by being better.
Yeah.
Because to your point, everyone expects an accountant to do the same tax work.
Sure.
So the way you differentiate yourself is by being different, which is by providing this experience and by providing that value.
Exactly. And Scott McCain, a colleague of mine who has some great books out, he says even better than being different is be distinct. He says, because you think of it, you could stand on the sidewalk going blah 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 blah, right?
Yeah.
You're different.
Yeah.
But that may not make someone want to do business with you.
Yep. We could spend a lot of time on each of the laws. I remember the first time I read it, probably the law that impacted me the most was the story with Sam, and when he talks about how 50-50 is a losing proposition.
Right.
Right.
And I mean, just the story with his wife, and it was something that impacted me with my wife, because I think it's really easy for us to keep score with people. Mm-hmm. Even how he's keeping score with, you owe me one. Joe says that in the book, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, when you're thinking of those types of things, how hard is it? I mean, because it's part of this story that you're trying to create this parable, but like, when did you know like that certain things were going to be like really powerful? Like, did you know as you were writing them, like, okay, this is
okay.
Something very impactful.
that story in the book that you're talking about is that was something actually based on a conversation I had with my dad when I was about 10 years old.
Okay.
And what happened is Joe asked Pindar, "How is it you and your wife have been married for 50? Have been so happy for 50 years?" And
yeah.
Pindar said something like, "Because I care about her happiness more than my own." Right. And Joe said, "But wouldn't some people call that codependent?"
Yeah.
And Pindar said, "Some would. You know what I call it?" And Joe said, "Happy?" And he said, "Yeah." But we had to put the codependent part in there because these days, if someone can misinterpret something, sometimes they will. And so here's really the story.
Might as well address it.
Yeah. So when I was because we wanted people to know we're not talking about a codependent upon really that so anyway, when I was about 10 years old, I asked my dad, and at the time, some of my friends' parents were getting divorced. And my folks were known as, having just such a great marriage. And I said to Dad, "How is it that you and Mom have such a great marriage?" And, and Dad said, "Well, Bob, when you really, really love someone, you actually care more about their happiness than you do your own. And again, for the record, he wasn't talking about a codependent relationship where, there's abuse or someone's, no. He was saying when two people really love each other, or as my folks used to explain, when they really like each other, okay?
That's true.
They both, what they basically do is they identify with each other's happiness, okay? So because of that, it's not 50-50, it's 100.
Yeah.
Both
Exactly.
people, though, are giving 100. And when both people are giving 100, magic happens,
Exactly.
right? And so that's what Pindar was telling Joe in the story. And we put that in because even though it's a business book and Portfolio, Penguin Random House, Portfolio is a business arm, so obviously it was a business book.
Yeah.
But we wanted to put that in there as sort of a subplot because we wanted people to kind of see that, it's more than just business, that these principles, like any universal laws or principles, apply across the board.
It's true. A true principle is true
Sure.
in all aspects of life, and he talks about that in the book.
Right.
I think another law that I think gets overlooked, and maybe I'm just wrong, maybe it was me that overlooked it, and that's why I'm like projecting that out on other people, but the law of receptivity.
Right.
Like being open to receive, because it says in there, when Pindar asked Joe, when you think of receiving, what's the first phrase that comes to mind? And it's better to give than it is to receive, right? And then in the book he says it's insane,
Right, to try and
give and not receive. But I think it's so hard for people to be willing to receive. Everyone is always looking for ways they can help, but then they always resist people trying to help them.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's, at least maybe for me, I feel like that's probably one of the laws that is maybe harder to understand or implement.
Harder to implement, yeah, because and John and I have both received so many emails from people who have said, that chapter finally told me it was not only okay, but it was right for me to receive. And we of course love hearing that, but we feel bad that it has to even be that way.
Yeah.
That society has kind of trained everyone as such that if you're receiving, you must be doing something bad.
Yeah,
right? It's
that wealth is evil and money is bad.
And you think about it, because remember that the story in that chapter was where Pindar asked Joe to breathe out, and after he finished breathing out, hold that to the count of 30, and of course Joe couldn't, and that's where Pindar said, well, what if I told you it's actually been proven it's healthier to breathe out than it is to breathe in? And Joe said, that's silly, you can't, you got to do both. But and so we breathe out, we breathe in, we breathe out carbon dioxide, we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out, which is giving, we breathe in, which is receiving. Now, contrary to popular belief, as I like to say, giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. They're simply two sides of the very same coin. But you never know that when you think about the messages we receive from society around us, because, we do not get mixed messages about money and prosperity from the world around us. We get negative messages.
Absolutely.
Everywhere you see, it's the rich people are bad, and if you're wealthy, you did it on the backs of others.
Yep.
And hey, it's a big world, and there are lots of people who do bad things, and hey, that is true. But first of all, there's a few things about that. One, in a free market-based economy, and again, free market meaning no one is forced to buy from anyone else, but it also means no one has special advantages over anyone else. And so we don't live in a totally free market economy. There's a lot of what's called cronyism, where big business and other special interests get together, and through their lobbyists on K Street, they buy special favors from politicians. That's not capitalism. And unfortunately, that's what so many people think capitalism is. But it's not. It's cronyism. And people even sometimes call it crony capitalism, which bugs the heck out of me because it almost gives legitimacy to it. And I would say crony capitalism is to capitalism what Chinese checkers is to checkers. Nothing. Nothing. Just, And so, but free market capitalism, you can't make money unless you are providing value to other people who choose to buy from you. Because, and I often say this when I speak at a sales conference, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet.
No.
Right?
Exactly.
They're not going to buy from you because you need the money or you have projections of what you should sell. And they're not even going to buy from you just because you're a nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And this means that in a truly free market economy, it's up to the salesperson or the business to prove to that customer
The value they
that
have.
the value, right, is
Yeah.
going to be much more than what they're paying for. That's
Yeah.
also why we say that money is simply an echo of value.
It's just an exchange.
Absolutely.
That's all it is. It's just an
Absolutely.
exchange.
And so in a free market-based economy, you can only get wealthy following the 5 laws, really, whether or not you're doing it. Again, the 5 laws are not something John and I made up, that all of a
Right.
sudden, these are principles that have been around since there have been economy,
Yeah.
market economies, since the bazaars in ancient Babylonia, and the
Yeah.
time where James Klassen, wrote The Richest Man in Babylon.
Right.
In fact, remember Klassen
read
Hill,
that
the
book.
company Joe worked for?
Yeah.
It was named after Klassen, who wrote, The Richest Man in
I
Babylon, and
never
Napoleon
put
Hill.
that-
I didn't
I didn't put that
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Yeah, and so there's actually throughout the Go-Giver series, the names of some of the different companies all have stories,
Oh, that's
kind of
cool.
days
That
ago.
is cool.
But anyway, so that's so we're taught all these horrible stories about money and about abundance. A friend of mine, Randy Gage, is probably at this point about the leading teacher right now on abundance mindset. I mean, this guy's all over the place, but he did this great vignette about movies where if you go to if you watch a blockbuster movie, there are typically 2 types of characters, and you'll notice this from now on every time. There are the good people who are always portrayed as being the underdog. They're poor, but they're happy. They're always poor but happy. But they're always being stepped on, stepped over, pushed down, pushed around, taken advantage of by who?
The evil rich.
The evil rich people who are mean and nasty and cowardly and have no soul. And you can go through all these different movies, and then there's you get one example, or just one of the many things you'll see is, for example, in the first Spider-Man movie, when Peter Parker is sitting with his Uncle Ben, and Uncle Ben says, "Peter, we may not be rich, but at least we're honest." Oh gosh, what a horrible!
What
it's
message
like-
did you just
yeah,
give
what
to
message-
everyone?
to
every
every
little kid is watching
right.
that.
And
You hear that you're pre-programmed with all of these things
Absolutely.
that you
So we
hear.
did-
I'm not happy. Oh, I'm honest. Oh, that means I can't be both.
So you think about it, that in these messages come in at an unconscious level.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about this. You're not deciphering it. You're not checking premises and asking, why does that person think
Well,
that?
they're
Where did they
programmed when
learn
you're
it? How
such
do
a
they-"
young age, too.
Right. So now you grow up and you start providing immense value to the marketplace, right? And so money starts coming to you, and all of a sudden you do things that
evil-
sabotage that. Why? Because unconsciously you're thinking, wait a second, I'm about to make a lot of money. And if I make money, I must have done something evil.
be bad.
And I'm a good person. And this is all unconscious. And that's why I suggest people that you study Randy Gage, study David Nagel, study Bob Proctor, study the people who are writing, speaking, teaching on prosperity.
Yep.
Because we get the garbage information. Remember too that even more so these days, because there are so many media outlets trying to get eyeballs, because that's what pays the advertising. So you put
Gotta
a
be so
story up
extreme.
there, right? So here's a story that doesn't sell. Corporate CEO treats people wonderfully.
Exactly.
Salesperson, totally honest and fantastic, loved by customer, right? They workshop that one, I guess it didn't test. But
There's
what
no
does-
click-through rate on that one.
No, but what does sell? Enron and Tyco and what was the bank where they were cheating their customers?
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo, and then Volkswagen, which was with the falsifying the emissions testing, and so forth. Sure, those happen so rarely that that compared to people who are
for sure.
Yeah, and so, but those are the ones that sell. And there's a psychological factor, and this is just part of human nature, that I think it's called the recency effect, and that is what we hear last and what we hear most, we tend to think of as true, even though it may not be at all. But again, you're not going to hear about the honest printer down the street who works who invested their own money and worked 16-hour days to get a business going, and now it's in the third generation and it's serving tons of people, and it's what I'm saying. That doesn't sell.
Yep.
That's part of where I feel like the genius of the book The Go-Giver comes in, because for me, the reason that I connected so well with it is because every principle, it's like you said, there are these universal principles. It's not like you created the law of value. You just put words to it maybe that were a little bit different. And I think that is what was so valuable to me, because these principles were principles that at my core I believe and I live, but I was never maybe able to communicate them in such a way. And so that's why I was so drawn to the book and the principles, is because literally I can feel like I can read the book and it's as if it's me talking, but it's not, because it does a better job of explaining what I wish I could explain to the people.
Exactly.
Thank you.
But one thing in there that it talks about a lot with Joe and with Pindar and Gus, kind of that mentor-protege relationship.
Right.
And I think so many people, I know we have tons of listeners who have said, hey, I'd love to have this mentor or that, but it's like, what value can I provide them? If someone came up to you and, Bob, you're one of the most successful authors, you just got inducted into the Hall of Fame for speech. All of these accolades, right? And it's like, what value could I ever provide you? So what advice do you have for someone who is maybe in the protege role, that they want to find that mentor, and as opposed to just feeling like a mooch or a leech, you actually can feel like you can provide value?
And by the way, thank you for calling it protege instead of mentee. It's actually protege, and I've been on a quest for years. One of my tilting at windmill things for people to know it's protege. It's mentor and protege.
Yeah.
Mentor and mentee. But what a ridiculous thing to even care about, right? When you think about it, Gee, we don't have any other problems in the world. Just,
I'm going to die. I'm not a mentee.
Yeah. So,
or a mento.
I don't think it's a matter of you have to have. Let's put it this way. I don't think any mentor who you want to have mentor you is thinking that you're going to be able to provide them with any kind of significant concrete value.
Yeah.
They're going to mentor you because they want to.
The law of abundance.
And it's something they want to. It makes them happy to do it. You know what I'm saying? They don't feel any threat, first of all, so that's the law of abundance, but it brings them happiness, it brings them joy. By and large, people do what they believe is going to make them happy, and there's people, not everybody's going to want to be a mentor, not everybody wants to in any way, shape, or form be one, but there's a lot of people who do. And so I don't think it's a matter of you have to have something of value other than your gratitude, but here's kind of how I would approach asking, and maybe how to not approach. Because first of all, these days you can pretty much approach anyone, but I wouldn't just approach someone with whom you don't have a relationship and say, hey, will you be my mentor? Okay? Because it's sort of like, it's that old saying, asking for the marriage before asking for the date. It's like you're saying to this person, hey, would you share 40 years of your life experience with me, even though you don't know me from a hole in the wall? So I wouldn't do that, and it can come across as entitled, even if that's not how you mean it. But I think most people would ask that because they don't know a better way, and that's fine. It's until you don't know. But here's what I would do. I would suggest someone who you respect enough that you would want to have that kind of relationship. I would say, first, just ask, and you let them know that I know you're very busy. If this wouldn't be appropriate or just simply not something you want to do, please, that's totally fine. But I'm wondering if I might ask one or two very specific questions. So what you've done is, first of all, you've given the person an out or back door, which is respectful. Okay, You've let them know you don't just expect, you're not entitled to this. You realize it's a big ask and it's a big thing, and you're not just saying, I want to pick your brain, or I want to, just talk to you about general stuff. I've got one or two questions, and most people, again, not all, but it doesn't have to be all. But some are going to say, sure, absolutely, that's fine. Well, what do you have in mind? Or, and so you ask those questions. Now, you want to make sure to research this person, which you can find out information about this person online.
Right.
Make sure you don't ask anything that you could have found the answer to by, doing your research. And then what I would also do is, at the end of the conversation, I would, first of all, thank them, let them know how much you value their wisdom and that you look forward to applying it right away, and that you will, keep in touch, and let them know. Then what I would do is that very day, I would write a handwritten, personalized note of thanks. Just a short one, doesn't have to be anything long, but just thanking them for their time and their expertise and their counsel. Again, I look forward to applying it right away. I will keep in touch if that's okay, and just let you know how things are going. Again, I can't thank you enough. Best regards. You name. And then handwrite the envelope, put a regular hand stamp or a commemorative stamp, not a meter machine stamp, and send it. I would also, excuse me.
I just want to ask, because some people might gloss over that. Why do you think it's so important for the handwritten to write that? I mean, you even made sure to talk about writing on the envelope a personal stamp, because I think those details might be lost on some. How come you're making sure to talk about that?
Because it's the ultimate way of saying that I appreciate you and that I took time to do that. It's not a text. It's not an email, which is, okay, but it doesn't really make a statement.
Yeah.
And they see you as someone who, wow, okay, I'm happy to help this kind of person who I know is gonna. Now, I would also, and again, you can get this information right off the person's website, or you can ask their admin or whatever, but find out what this person's favorite charitable cause is, okay? And then make it doesn't have to be anything big, but a small donation in their name. It'll get back to them, and you're not doing it to kiss up or anything. You're doing it because you just want them to know that, again, while you obviously aren't in a position, where you can, that you respect the process, and you appreciate them, and you want to, in some way, be able to bring value to them.
I love that.
I have to say, my mom's talked about it, but you definitely live everything you talk about, because even on social media, where there is a really negative reputation about what social media can do for people and the relationships that you build, a lot of people talk about the fakeness of it, but there are real, true, authentic relationships there. And I think what I've been most impressed about, I mean, the reason we're sitting here is because you answered something on Twitter from me. But what I love is how genuine you are and grateful, and you respond yourself to everything on social media. How do you find time to do that?
It can be tough, but it's congruent with my values. I just believe it's important.
Yeah. And so I think it's so great that even at your position, as busy as you are and the success that you've had, you still take time to respond to people that you have never met before. And I think that means a lot to people.
Absolutely.
But Bob, I want to respect your time. We've hit our time limit, and I'm just so grateful that you're willing to take some time today, because this literally has been, like, we talk about kind of bucket list. Number one
for sure
guest that I wanted to have when I started this was you, because your book has impacted me more than any book outside of Scripture. And so I'm super grateful for you. I'm excited that we have all the different books in this series, and I've read them all. So right now, I want to give you time. What should people be looking for from you? I mean, you do have the other books in the series. Are you working on more, or like, where do you go from here? I know you kind of are starting to scale back the speaking. Where are you going from here?
We have a few other things. My business partner, Kathy Tajanel, and I, and she's brilliant. I mean, she makes the whole company run a lot. She really frees me up to do my couple of things that I'm competent at, you know what I'm saying, and she does the rest. And so we have a couple things. One is we have a certified Go-Giver speaker program where we have people from all over the world that license my materials, basically, is what it comes down to. And we show them how to have a speaking career, professional speaking career, and they typically utilize the Go-Giver, Endless Referrals, Genuine Influence, materials, along with their own expertise. We also have a series of programs called the, we're just starting that, but we had the Go-Giver Entrepreneurs Academy, which we run a few times a year in Orlando, and now we're just starting the Endless Referrals, the Go-Giver Way 2-day workshop. We'll be having both in Orlando and in South Florida, having those a few times a year.
Are those going to be different, the Go-Giver Entrepreneur and the Endless Referral, the Go-Giver Way?
The Go-Giver Entrepreneur one it's a 2.5-day workshop where we limit it to just 10 people. And we go very, very deep into everyone's business individually, And it tends to be all very successful people from generally different fields. So aside from the Go-Giver stuff in there, there's a whole lot of masterminding on a very high level that goes. The Endless Referrals, the Go-Giver Way, will be a little bit different. It will be a 2-day event. It will be limited to 50, but it won't be as, we'll be having exercises that people will be doing to clarify some of the things they're doing, and we'll, yes, absolutely be working with them on how they can, based on their business position. But it's a little bit more generic, in that it's the basic principles.
A little more
and then
people's
how they,
canopies.
Yeah, so that we can handle 50 with no issue whatsoever, and we'll have a couple of our certified speakers and coaches there to help.
Cool.
And that. And then the other thing is we're probably in January coming out with a Endless Referrals, the Go-Giver Way online course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're very excited. We're in post-production
That's
right now.
great.
That's awesome. I'm
Yeah,
really,
that is.
those are some great things. I'd love to
Be involved.
I'm going to be down there one day with your Entrepreneur Go-Giver
Cool.
course. I'm going to make it there one day.
We love it.
But yeah, Bob, thanks for your time today. This was
Thank you.
awesome.
Oh, my
so
pleasure.
It was
everyone who's
awesome.
listening, go get the Go-Giver. Live the
Absolutely.
principles. They will literally change your life if you implement them. And everybody have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.